Welcome to the FamBoss Frequency. This episode is brought to you by DCCI, your trusted partner for two-way radios, GPS tracking, and dash cameras. From the family room to the boardroom, we are here to help you stay connected when it matters most. Join your host, Chris, as we dive deep into what it really takes to run the show.
This is the FamBoss Frequency. Tuning in the spirit of the family tree. We scale the peaks and navigate the tides, with strength of generations as our guides.
Welcome back to another episode of the FamBoss Frequency. My name is Chris and I'm your host.
Taking every dream and making it whole.
That's right. We got a great show lined up for you today, man. It has been a busy week. I bring a lot to the table, and we're going to start off with some headlines and share some information on that, and then we're going to have a conversation about what it takes to bring people into your life that are supposed to be there for a season, and some are supposed to be there for a reason. So we'll talk about how that goes into your legacy, and then of course we'll go into a deep dive of the GPS. Where did it start? Where are we at today, and how do we get there? So we've got a great segment on that for you as well. And then of course, Skyler and I spend some time together talking about contracts and why they're necessary and what to look for when getting into a contract with anybody. So stay tuned. We've got a full show ahead, and buckle up, grab your coffee, and get your Coke, whatever you got going on. And this is the FamBoss Frequency.
To navigate the tides, with strength of generations as our guides. Home is the office, and the office is our
Welcome back to the next segment. We're going to talk about strange headlines from around the world. So I've got my son Skyler hanging out with me today, and
How you doing?
I'm doing good, but I can't believe the world sometimes. You saw the one we talked about yesterday on the shape-shifting frog?
I did.
And that's AI for you. So today I got a fresh batch of strange headlines. So since we're shifting into this next one, we're going to go into the fun things and the headlines. So I look on the internet quite a bit, and I see strange stories on, like, the little video shorts and so forth. Then I'm like, there ain't no way that's real. So then I got to actually go research and see if that's AI or if it's something somebody just made up. So headline number one, a man in Pennsylvania got in trouble when he tried to take his licensed emotional support alligator named Wally into a professional baseball game. Can you walk me through that a little bit? An alligator in Pennsylvania to start with is kind of crazy. Let's start with that.
It's definitely something.
Yeah.
Tropical animal in the cold.
You gonna bring it up a little bit?
Tropical animal in the cold. That's definitely something.
Yeah, that's problematic in every way conceivably possible, especially when you're trying to go to a baseball game. And how do you keep it from biting people? We don't really know. So let's travel around the world just a little bit further. We're going to go to the great state. I guess it's kind of a state of mind in Antarctica. And if you're looking for a job, I've got a good one for you. So in Port LaCroix in Antarctica, they have a job opening at their post office. They have a post office in Port LaCroix in Antarctica. The catch: you're counting penguins, processing mail for tourists, and there's no running water or heat for 5 months. I think I'm going to go try something a little more different than that, because out of all of those things that you just mentioned, they're all losers to me. And what we're not going to do is count penguins. Let's start with that. And I mean, they all look the same, right? So how do you count the penguins and know that you've got a legit, count going there? So, but yeah, that job is available for anyone who's interested. Now, my son can attest to the fact that I don't like to waste anything. As a matter of fact, when my wife is out of town for the next 10 days, I'm going to make one pot of coffee and make sure I have enough for the whole day and the evening too. So this story really struck my heart, and I said, there's no way this can be true. But there is a 100-year-old time capsule soup at a restaurant in Bangkok. And this apparently is very accurate. So when I looked it up, I was like, I got to learn how this works even. Is it like, what's the story? So the story, based on what I could find, it's a giant vat of beef noodle soup that's been simmering for nearly 50 years. They just keep adding new ingredients to the mother broth every day. So I guess if you got a good base and you keep adding good stuff, you can eventually get to a point where you have good food for 100 years.
Same concept as sourdough. There's those girls that'll make the bread and produce it, and they'll use the same starting batch over and over again, time and time again.
I guess I can kind of see that to a degree. The problem I run into with that is, I guess if you keep it warm, it's fine. So I don't know. That's a tough one for me. I mean, I don't know. The restaurant that's been doing that for, I mean, they're just adding. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. I guess it's good. I guess it gets better. And I mean, the ingredients are fresh, so you're kind of refreshing it anyway. And then the mother broth is just kind of I mean, how much of that do you think is really the original still? Just have to wonder. So another one, this falls into my frugal category. And I've heard of these before. I was like, whatever. No, but this is actually fairly true. Let's go back to the post office. So the story goes back in the day, I think it was in the mid-90s, a guy in Australia decided that he would garner the help of his friends to take a trip via a wooden crate in air freight on the bottom of the plane. He rode to his destination 8.5 hours upside down in a wooden crate. Now, he survived to tell the story, but he learned a few things along the way. First and foremost, it doesn't matter if you put fragile on the outside of the crate, you're still getting beat down no matter what. It was very uncomfortable, and he said it took him up about 2 weeks to regain the ability to walk the way he was supposed to have been able to walk when he got there. And I guess being crammed in a wooden crate and being beaten to death in a wood crate would kind of, negate aspects of that. But what do I know? So these are the headlines we've got here for this week. Check out the FamBoss.com to see more of these stories and headlines. And if you've got a headline you'd like for us to see, you can submit it there on the site. Give us a call on the listener line, at 855-4 podcast. And we may introduce your topic and look for that same headline in a future show. Hang out until the next segment. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the FamBoss Frequency. I'm your host, Chris. And hey, I want your voice to be heard. I want to hear you. And if you want everyone else to hear you too, by all means, join us on our voice line, our listener line. It's new. Not really. We've had it since the beginning, but it's 1-855-4 podcast. That's 855-4, spell out the word podcast, and let your voice be heard. We want to hear from you. And if I like it enough, maybe we'll play it on the air. So anyway, swing by the listener line and check it out. Also visit our website at thefamboss.com. That's right. Our new website is thefamboss.com. Go there and find everything about the FamBoss, including information on sponsors, upcoming shows, events, everything pertaining to the FamBoss podcast. So visit the website, hit up the old telephone number, and hey, make sure you like, share, and share with a friend. So I want to share something this segment that's kind of been on my heart for a while, and it really has. I had a health scare recently this year that really kind of brought this back to me, and it's knowing your legacy. But to know your legacy, you got to know your circle. So have you ever noticed how not everyone in your life plays the same role, but we treat them like they should? So I think that's where a lot of frustration comes from, because we expect loyalty from people who are only ever supposed to be seasonal, and they're there for a reason, and we've misunderstood their purpose or their reasoning. We expect depth from people who only know how to stay on the surface, and some of those people only see what's in front of their face. But furthermore, we expect consistency from people who only show up when it benefits them. And I know I struck a nerve with a lot of people there, because if you look at your missed calls, check out your text message, look around, you'll see. And this is true in my personal life and my business life as well. But if you don't learn how to identify who's who, you'll spend your whole life being disappointed. People are who they are. Maya Angelou said it best. When people show you who they are, believe them. I believe them. People are real quick to show you who they are in a lot of situations. So today I want to talk about roles. Because once you understand the roles people play in your life, everything changes. Your expectations, your peace, and ultimately your legacy. So first you've got the convenience people. These are the ones who call when they need something. They check in when it benefits them. You know, they show up when there's an opportunity attached. We got a lot of those, I'm sure. A lot of people have had that experience. And I'm not saying you have a lot of them in your life necessarily, but I think we've all experienced those friends. Those fair weather friends, my grandmother used to call them. People that are only there when it benefits them. And these people aren't necessarily bad people, but that's not your core. That's not your foundation. The mistake we make is treating them like they are. You give and you give and you give, expecting that same energy back. And when it doesn't come, you know, you feel used and abused. You're like, oh, they only call me when they need something. But the truth is, they were consistent the whole time. You just misidentified their role in your life and your legacy. Then you got those people in your life, and I got a few of these. I ain't got a lot of them, but I got a few of them. These are your ride or die people. These are the ones that you would do anything in the world. These are the ones who show up when it's inconvenient, when it's messy, when there's nothing to gain. When it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you got a situation going on, oh man, they're there right there with you, no matter what, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They're the ones sitting with you in a hospital waiting room, waiting for results on something that has nothing to do with them, but they're there for you. They're not just around for the wins. They're there for the losses, peaks and valleys, baby. They're there when you're not at your best. These are the people who see who you truly are. And even if you're the one or two people in your life, if you only have those one or two people in your life, even if it's only one or two, you're still winning. Those are the relationships I choose to protect. Those are the people I choose to invest in. And I make sure those people know that they matter. Then there's the truth tellers. These are the people who will look you dead in the eye and tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And those sometimes are the hardest people to talk to. Let's be real, especially when we're lying to ourselves. Those conversations don't always feel good, but they're necessary. Because growth does not come from comfort. It comes from correction. Sometimes it's course correction. Sometimes it's how you look at something. But if you don't have someone like that in your life that'll check you, that's dangerous. I don't need a bunch of yes people in my life. I don't need a bunch of yes sir. Well, yeah, that's great. That's the best thing ever. Yeah, you absolutely should jump off the roof with a grocery sack. That's a great idea. We need somebody in our lives that can say, hey, you're off track. I think you're wrong on this one. Maybe you're thinking too small. Maybe the scale is not really what you want. It's not negativity, it's value. Let me share something with you about the value of this person. I went to one of these places where you network with other small business owners and so forth, which is where I met my banker, my accountant, and a few other people. The guy who does the detailing of my vehicles and all that fun stuff. But I met my accountant, and she worked with the IRS at one point, and she knows tax law and a bunch of other crazy stuff. She is my truth teller. She's the one that'll sit across the table and say, hey, you're selling yourself short. You need to be doing more when it comes to your pricing. It's time for a price increase. Well, why not? And she doesn't back down. And she doesn't say, oh, I just, no. She's what I call a foundational person. And she's a very instrumental person in my business. She's somebody that I absolutely trust. And then you have those people that have been there through chapters of your life. These people are the ones that have been there through it all. They've seen the different seasons. They've seen different versions of you. They've seen you win. They've seen you fail. They've seen you grow. And they've watched you grow. And they've watched you change. And their presence is absolutely a part of your story. I have a good friend of mine who's in the IT world. When I met this guy, he was slinging burgers at Hardee's. And he's kind of part-time doing other stuff. But he and I met under some interesting circumstances, and he was referred to from a friend. And the long and the short of it all was we became friends pretty quick. And he saw a vision in my phone store, and he's like, if we could only do this and that. And I was like, yeah, man, cool. So we played Let's Make a Deal, and bam, we made it happen. And so I got him for the low price of, I don't remember what it was, but it was nothing. And I'm talking about we had fun. I took care of him. We hung out. And I was young. I was a young boss too. But this dude right here, he came in and totally changed how everything worked. And we've been friends ever since. When he went through, left my store and got another job, we worked together years ago at a cellular reseller. Then after that, we kind of parted ways on the job front. We've stayed friends. We were always friends. We actually had a job where we worked together where our bosses pitted us against each other. And, luckily we didn't allow that to win, but we remained friends through it all. This is a guy who knows everything about my life, before my wife, before I had kids, when I used to, get hammered at Applebee's after work. I mean, this is a guy who really has watched me change. He remembers when I was so desperate to be successful. He remembers dragging me through multi-level marketing and all these different opportunities. He knew that I always wanted to be successful. I want to leave a positive legacy behind. That's someone in your life that has seen it all. And that's funny. Today I got a call from him. He's like, hey, I need your help. Yeah, what you got? He's like, tenant thermostat. Can you help me out? I was like, yeah, brother, say less. I jumped in the truck, rode down, picked up the thermostat. Bing, bang, boom. Done within the hour. Cakewalk. And I'll do it again. Now, he's calling me for some other crazy stuff too. But that's somebody that I know if I pick up the phone and say, hey, man, I got this idea. The one that I like to razz him about the most is there used to be a website back in the day where basically it was before Facebook and MySpace became a thing. I'm like, dude, we got to do this. Like, I don't know what it's called, but this is the website. And this is what you got a profile. You get to interact with people. There's lots of ways you can find them. There's chats. This is that. I was like, this is the future. And like, he was living with his mom at the time. He's like, nah, man, it's just a fad. It ain't going nowhere. Well, Facebook, Meta, TikTok, I see you. Social media is huge. And we didn't jump on that bandwagon. But, he was like, I got you. So he's that guy I can call and say, hey, I had it happen today. I called him this morning about something completely just random. And I'm like, hey, man, I've been noticing every time I log into my social media, I used to get things that were kind of tailored to my interests, but now they're really not. And, I'm having a hard time understanding if I'm supposed to be marketing and advertising, if I can't get served things that I'm interested in and I'm getting served something completely different, like, is this happening to everybody? And so we started talking through these different things. And this was a guy that was like, look, man, what do you want to do about it? And I was like, well, I don't want to feed the beast, but I want to, leverage the audience to my benefit, so what say you? And we walked through these things. And this is a guy, again, who knows my history, who understands what my goals are. He says things in a way that I can understand. Now, you take the same guy and these concepts, and I go to put them in front of my accountant, and she's like, Chris, do you think it's really, makes sense to spend X amount of dollars on going down this venture that is untested and unproven? I'm like, you see what I'm saying? Like, they all work together, though. So, man, I went off on a tangent there, but it matters. So some of the people who helps you build, some of those people who have helped me build, I should say, are those mentors. Those are the people that have walked ahead of me. They've made the mistakes. They've learned the lessons. They've paid the price, and I've learned from their knowledge, from their mistakes. And if you're smart, you don't just admire them, you listen to those people. Because those mentorships, those relationships, those experiences, they shorten the learning curve for whatever you're doing. It can save a lot of trial and error, but this is the part people don't talk about enough. At some point, you become the mentor. That's the legacy that starts to show up. Because everything you've been through, every mistake, every lesson, every hard-earned skill, it wasn't just for you. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't always been someone who added value. There were a lot of times when I was younger, I was very selfish. There were times I didn't show up for people. I just let people down. There were a lot of times that I wasn't the kind of person others could depend on. And I had to learn that the hard way. One of the biggest changes in my life was when my grandmother wrote me a letter one time. And I mean, she typed it out and printed it out and left it on my desk in my room at her house. And I knew it was serious. And I read through it. And I was like, wow. But learning that lesson the hard way, through the failures, through broken relationships, and realizing that success without impact is without the impact is empty. Those are lessons that stick with you. But over time, something shifted. I started asking different questions. Not what can I give, but what can I give? Not how do I win, but who can I help win? Because real respect is the kind that lasts. It doesn't come from what you have. It comes from the value you bring into other people's lives. In sales, we're always trying to bring value. Well, let's be real. Being a person of quality and character, that builds value. It's the ultimate sales game, period. That's what people remember. That's what builds your name and your legacy. And here's the truth. You're not going to like it, but hold on to your hats. Not everyone in your life is meant to receive everything you have to give. That's why identifying those roles matter. Don't pour everything you have into everyone the same way. You don't give everybody the same access. You don't expect everyone to play the same part. But you do make a decision about who you're going to be. Are you going to be someone who takes or someone who adds value? Are you going to be somebody who is remembered for what you built or who you helped build? Because at the end of the day, your legacy isn't just what you've accomplished, it's what you passed on. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. What's your gift that leads you to your legacy? Ponder on that. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. It's hard to think that in, 3 generations, people never know my name. I want to change that. But if I keep doing the same thing I'm doing now, they're not going to know my name. And why would they? So ask yourself that question. What is your gift that leads you to your legacy? So think about that. And if you've experienced any of this or have some of this you'd like to share with us, visit the old hotline. Call us at 855-4podcast and share your thoughts on this. I think the legacy thing is very important. I think being a quality person is absolutely one of the most important things you can be. Because if you're anything like me, I cannot deal with garbage people. And I'm talking about people who cheat on their spouses, who bring no value to my life. We talked about that on one of the episodes last week about cutting the garbage, cutting through the noise. That's one of the biggest things you can do. So that's my challenge to you. What is your gift that leads you to your legacy? Stick around for the next segment. Welcome back to the FamBoss Frequency. I'm your Chris host, and man, from an emotional support alligator to guys mailing themselves in wooden crates, that's nuts. It just goes to show you that if there's a way to overcomplicate a simple task, somebody out there is going to figure it out. But here's the thing. While those stories are good for a laugh in your business, wild is the last thing you want. You want predictable. You want precise, and you want protected. That's the thing everyone's after. We spent a lot of time talking about the now, but to really understand where we're going with all these data points and the future of your fleet, we have to look at where all of this started. And so in this particular episode, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of telematics, which is essentially the EKG of your business. So we're going to look at the history from Cold War tech that tracked submarines to the modern AI, that's watching all of your trucks and drivers and everything in real time. This isn't just about dots on a map anymore. It's about engineering a safer and more profitable legacy for your business. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's pull back the curtain.
Do you remember the map scoops? That giant accordion-style paper shoved in the glove box? We all use them from time to time. Our grandparents have in the glove box for sure. Telematics only started as a military project in the 1960s and 70s. The U.S. Navy launched satellites to track submarines, non-delivery trucks. The aha moment was in 1983 when President Reagan opened GPS up to the civilians after a Korean airliner went off course. From there, the rest is history. In the 90s, telematics was back. It was just dots on a map. And a lot of times it was clunky and slow. And a lot of people had to wait till the trucks got back so they could go ahead and get the information they needed out of the box. It wasn't something they could just do over the air. So back when it started, we were a part of that. BCCI deployed some of the first data points in vehicles to be found. And sometimes it was up to a week before the data was able to get back to the client.
So from humble beginnings, we now kind of progress to where we are now. So let's move on to the early 2000s, give or take. In the early 2000s, this is when we move from where's the truck to how is the truck. So when GPS started, let's talk about what GPS actually is. There are satellites in the air that essentially triangulate a location to where a vehicle is located. And it kind of knows based on distance and all the fun things within reason where something's at. And that technology has really tightened up over the years. It's gotten a lot better. So it's pretty accurate within several feet now, whereas, in the beginning it was within reason, then it was, half mile, couple 100 yards. Now it's pretty precise. And getting the information from the ground back to you is pretty easily. So dots on a map are cool, but we had to expand beyond just the simple dots on a map. So when we got into all the data points with automobiles and vehicles, and they started putting computers in cars, and the computers were telling the cars what to do and recording data so they could make cars better. NASCAR was actually one of the first industries to adopt the ability to track data points. Well, they got the bright idea, if we can tie into the CAN bus data in an OBD port, an automobile, now we can take these things and really start building the data points to go along with the locations. And they started using this with, with racing for various things like how thin or thick the air is depending on where they're traveling that week, or certain track conditions or certain weather conditions allowed the trucks to get, or the vehicles to travel faster, slower. They started impacting the mechanical side of the world. So once they kind of got into the data point side of the world and started really delving into what was possible with those data points, then it turned into how do we put that stuff together? So the efficiency shift was really when they were able to take that data from the vehicle's onboard computer all the way over to the location of the vehicles and then put it in one pane of glass. So once they started shifting into that, they said, well, how can we market this? Like, there's got to be a way. There's a lot of things here. How do we market this? So they started looking at trucking companies. One of the biggest expenses trucking companies have, of course, is, tires, brakes, fuel is probably the most important. They've got to have fuel, but all the other things that go along with it. So they were able to introduce more aspects of the telematics to dots on a map. So now you've got CAN bus data from the computer. Well, then they added gyroscopes so they could tell when there was hard braking or aggressive turning or aggressive driving in general. So now you're able to put all of these pieces together. And I can remember when my son started learning to drive, we were working with a product that allowed you to basically plug into the OBD port or hardwire. And I was fascinated by the fact this thing could tell whether or not you're slamming on brakes, aggressive turning, speeding, all that fun stuff. And even with the 3-wire harness, and all it was doing was just that little box was measuring, that thing could give you a lot of information without even talking to the computer. Then when we added the OBD stuff to the mix, it was pretty incredible. I could see who had fuel. I could get text alerts when their fuel was low. If a check engine light was on, it may not be able to read the check engine light, but it could say, hey, you got a check engine light on in truck number 3. And that driver may or may not be willing to tell me that there's a light on in that truck. If, these guys are getting paid by the mile, they're kind of like, truck's still moving, let's keep it rolling. I'll report at the end of my shift. And then one thing leads to another, and that doesn't get reported. So now that vehicle that had a check engine light, and it could be something, little sensor that needs to be addressed or a reset, something you don't know. But now you have the ability to make that decision in your business because you've gone from dots on a map to putting all these pieces together in telematics world. For me personally, all of my vehicles have had telematics in them since I started kind of delving in this world back in 2017. And we've really watched it evolve from the dots on a map, and you can see where your vehicles are at on an app, to the development of the driver reporting, which is really nice. Everybody gets a score. And then you can really delve in and say, these are the things that are important to me. These things are not. So it's taking all these data points and customizing them to exactly what it is that you're looking for with your organization. If you're a company that starts and stops a lot, such as deliveries, your data points are going to be different than someone who is traveling, let's say 1,000 miles a week or several thousand miles in a couple of weeks because they're doing longer distances or they're traveling to more locations. Or maybe you have a towing company that's around town quite a bit, but they'll do long distance transports from time to time. Those data points are all going to be different. And that's one of the things we can help you with, is figuring out what is important to you. What are we after? So let's tie all that into the modern era today. So now that you've got all these data points, that's great. What are you going to do with them? Well, the introduction of AI, which terrifies a lot of people, has really assisted in taking all of this good data, raw data, and putting it into something that works very well for businesses to understand and make decisions. You can have the best flour under the sun. You can have the best organic eggs. You can have the best ingredients to a cake. But unless you put those ingredients together correctly in the proper amounts, cook them correctly, prepare them correctly, let them sit, all the things that make it matter, you're just going to have a cake. And it may or may not be good. But when you take the best ingredients and you have the best information and the knowledge and the experience behind it, you can make a pretty phenomenal cake. So that's what we've done. We've worked with some of the best in the industry that have taken the time to understand what the data allows you to do. So now you have that AI edge. And what that edge does is it takes the information you're given from a dash camera. The video that's there is very powerful. But is your driver on the phone? Is he wearing a seatbelt? Are they, smoking in the vehicle? Are there things that are happening on the road with your driver that shouldn't be happening, that are a poor representation of your organization? Did somebody cut your driver off? Did your driver cut somebody off? Did the dog run out in front of them, or do they not paying attention, swerve and hit an animal? There's a lot of questions that come up when you have a sticker on the side of the door of a vehicle. Period. If you're a company truck owner, you already know as soon as there's an accident, you're probably going to have a lawyer on the phone trying to get what they can out of you. So the AI really helps prevent a lot of these things ahead of time. So from marking video with alerts for distraction, not wearing seat belts, food and drink in the vehicles, smoking in the vehicles, aggressive driving, being able to give that video evidence, that photographic evidence to your driver, say, hey, look, we got a problem with this. Let's work on that. The other side is you can exonerate these guys. I can't tell you how many times I've dealt with my clients. They're like, hey, listen, this guy just called in. I'm out in the field and said that my driver almost ran him off the road. And we go back and we look, and the person in the vehicle that called to make the complaint, maybe they were messing around on their phone or dealing with their kid in the back seat or whatever, and they almost got hit by the truck. And in their mind and what they saw was absolutely correct, but it wasn't true in real life. In their mind, their perception was that truck tried to run them over, or that driver was being careless. And the person in that situation wants to make sure that driver, that company driver, is not going to kill people in that big truck. Because let's be real, if the state of Alabama, we've all been taught by our attorneys that the big bad mean trucks are out to kill everybody. No, I don't think that's how that works. So being able to exonerate these drivers is one of the best things that we do. Whenever we have a driver that finds himself in an uncomfortable situation, being able to go back and prove their innocence, they were not on their phone, they were not distracted, they weren't, eating a Subway sub and everything else under the sun that people have accused some of these drivers of doing. And on the flip side of that, you can kind of train to better behavior if you see those things ahead of time. And that's one of the biggest critiques we get from our fleet managers is, I've been trying really hard to help these guys be better drivers, but by alerting them to certain things like aggressive driving, wearing their seatbelt and kind of setting an expectation, being able to manage that expectation, it really has relayed itself into other savings, not just that we have better drivers and safer drivers, but our fuel costs are going down. Our cost of operating has gone down significantly in certain aspects. We're not buying tires as often. We're not having to service our brakes as often because everyone's getting used to easing to the stop signs, easing to the traffic lights, not waiting till the last minute because they now have a layer of accountability. And that's what it's all about. We're not here to play the gotcha game. We're not here to say, hi, I saw you do it, and now you're going to pay. It's not that way. We're here to help people build quality fleets with quality drivers. And in the world today, it is harder to find commercial drivers than you would think. That's one of the biggest complaints we get from all of our guys that have drivers. AI is coming and that's great. Well, at least right now, they can't drive dump trucks, log trucks, and asphalt trucks. So until that day comes, we've got to be very protective of the drivers that we have. And then when we're bringing new people on, use the technology to make sure that they're being able to grow up to be safe drivers, to be quality drivers, and somebody that can bring something of value to the table. So I think our roundup here is, while it had an intent in the beginning of helping to help locate for the federal government, ships and things of that nature, and it assists in tracking, it's turned into a consumer product, which has been a great thing. I can talk all day long about the pros and cons of telematics, but when you put the information with video in front of anybody who can understand what they're watching and seeing, it really does help to exonerate our innocent drivers. It helps us protect our companies and organizations from people who may not have the greatest of intentions and maybe looking for a simple payday. So at the end of the day, we want to help you make that decision when you're ready. Now, we've talked a lot about what GPS tracking is, and we've talked a lot about telematics and dash cameras and so forth. It's really important to understand what it takes to make that decision. And with DCCI, we have partnered with some of the best in the industry. And so we would like to introduce that opportunity to share with you what we know about the telematics side of the world. We've been doing this for a long time. So stay tuned for the next segment, and we'll have more. Your call is very important to us. Please continue to hold. Just kidding. Welcome back to the final segment here, the FamBoss Frequency, and I decided to bring in the next generation, the one that's chomping at the bit to take over the world, and I think they will probably do a much better job than some of the people we have today. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, front and center, Mr. Skyler. To the front, please.
How you doing?
Doing good as always. So, we run into interesting things when we're out in the field. And one of the things that we have talked about over and over again when we're dealing with our clientele is people ask about contracts a lot. So one of the things that drives me crazy is when I go somewhere to like a phone store. The way they help keep costs down is 2-year agreement. I used to sell phones.
Right.
I remember when the contract came into play and people would just blindly sign until they wanted to move. But nobody ever moved because that company owned your phone number and you couldn't port your number, so it didn't matter. Well, then when local number portability became a big thing, it was like, let's get them out of contract. And contracts serve several purposes. So you made a move recently in the last 6-7 months into a house. Did you find anything you had to sign a contract on yet?
Other than the rental agreement to the house itself and every contract it took nowadays to even speak to a real estate agent to begin with.
That's a nightmare. Do you know you have to pay to look at rentals now? That was the craziest thing to me.
Everything comes with an application fee.
I didn't understand the application fee. I didn't understand why they were. What got me with that was you would go through that process. You would agree to all these terms and conditions, and how many of them called you back?
Oh, two, I think out of over 2 dozen.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to pay the application fee before you can even put the paperwork into the company anymore.
It's crazy. So I feel like in that situation when we were younger, we, would have to go through, once we found the house and we agreed and all that, they're like, all right, it's $55 application fee. That's for both people. It's non-refundable. If you don't pass the background check and blah, 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 it's on you. Have you ever been convicted of a felony, yada, yada. And so I understood the purpose of the contract and the agreement. I got all that. But I'm like, first of all, we're not even at that step of the relationship where you want me to fill out paperwork. So let's talk about the actual contract itself and why the contracts matter. In our business, we deal with contracts quite a bit. There's a provider out there in the world of telematics that gives you a 30-day window to cancel your contract every 36 months. And the window is not like the 30 days before the contract runs out. It's like that 60 to 90 day window, and you've got to catch it on the third full moon before it goes around Jupiter. And if you don't catch it, guess what? They just locked you into another 36 months.
Right.
Crazy. So we decided years ago when we were under the contract side of the world, because we're under contract with almost everything that we do, where we're providing a service and they give us the equipment. So instead of paying, the $500, $600 for the dash camera, it's just built into the monthly cost. But we sign a contract basically stating that, we, the customer, the client, the end user, will be around for 36 months or 24 months, whatever the term happens to be. But I think we can all agree that when you sign an agreement, that really puts you in a bind when you are not happy. When it's a marriage of sorts. And when you have a good marriage and it's a happy marriage, no problem. But when it's not, that's a problem. So one of the things that we're very, very specific about when we start looking at products and services that require the contract aspect, I say, well, I want to tie my business up into that. Would I put my business on the line? And one of the things that I will say I'm most proud of is our customer service has come leaps and bounds in the last year since Skyler's been on the books. And I'm not just saying that because he's my son. These are things that I've been told by my clientele. So when you put somebody on an agreement and you say, this is what we're going to provide, this is what you provide, it really lays out a nice, positive roadmap to success. It gives everybody the ability to go through and say, all right, you're going to do this, I'm going to do that, and everybody should be right in the world. And we also put in contingencies. If things happen, let us know, let's work through them. Don't just disappear. And one thing that we have seen, we have seen companies go under. And we feel like if you're in a situation where your company's going under and, your life is falling apart and your world's crumbling around you, the last thing you need is me wagging my finger at you to, enforce a contract. If you have no money, how are you going to pay me? Sorry about that. That's the real world around here. It's the buses are starting to move, radios are starting to go off. So, sometimes you might get a little feedback, so to speak. So, but yeah, bringing in quality partners has been something pretty amazing. Skyler was here. He got to see the onboarding of a new vendor last year that we brought on, ClearPath. And that was his first opportunity to see from start to finish, from introduction of who they are and what they do, to kind of see how things go. And he's on the technical side. I gave him the lead on that. So you handle what you got to handle on the technical side. What do you like? What don't you like? And let's figure it out. So tell me some of the things that you were kind of impressed by when we started working with those guys.
The punctuality is going to be a big one. And I will say, as a consumer, sometimes you can get caught up in contract agreements too quickly and not read them, which is what, as you were mentioning, I owned in a phone store back in the day, people would sign their lives away and wouldn't even read the contract agreement once. Yeah. That is the big thing. And today is just ensuring you read those contracts, because the contracts are just as much of a consumer protection as they are the provider protection as well, to ensure that the provider makes their finances back on the back end, but also ensuring that the consumer is promised all of their ends.
So when you're out there in the field, a lot of times you'll deal with the decision maker when we're doing the implementation and so forth. When you set those expectations on the front end, how do you think that really sets the tone for that relationship with that client?
It starts off on a positive foot to let them know that they can directly contact a service member or anybody to get them an answer to any problems or solutions they may be seeking. And that would be the difference with a lot of these larger companies where we would have the chance to benefit, would be the fact that these X companies and Y companies cannot provide that same service, especially not locally. And being able to establish that local aspect of our business has definitely been a deal closer.
Yeah, I think everybody says, locally owned and operated, and it's kind of a tagline anymore. And, come see, X, Y, and Z locally owned and operated and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is the people who are our competitors in that space, they're not from here. They don't understand the needs of our businesses. They don't understand our geography. There's some areas where cell phone service doesn't work. What's your plan B? And then there's some areas where certain providers don't work. And we know that. So I think that really gives us an opportunity to do well when it comes to servicing those accounts. The other thing I will say when you're tying yourself into an agreement is, you want to make sure that if they're new to the area, if you're new to working with that particular company, ask that honest question. Do you have someone I can speak to learn more about their experience with your service? And they may have a simple question that, as a provider, we can't answer that question because, like I said, I don't know I do this every single day. So when someone says, so how long does it take to do an install? I can tell you it takes about, 10 to 15 minutes to install the device, make sure everything's good to go, and you're on your merry way. Whereas another provider can say, hey, we got all of our, 15 trucks turned over by lunchtime. That means something. I can tell you it takes 15 minutes all day long. But when someone who's been through the process says, oh, yeah, we had 20 trucks and they were done in a very relatively short period of time, there's a lot of value to that. So while I have a love-hate relationship with contracts, I do like being able to pull out my contract. And I've had to go to providers in the past and say, hey, look, your agreement states X, Y, and Z. You're not holding up your end of the bargain. And you're expecting me to be the face of your organization and go enforce these things in these contracts that you're not even doing yourself. So, like I said, we all have that love-hate relationship when it comes to contracts. When you have a good provider, a contract's a good, healthy thing to have. When you have a bad provider, a contract is a good thing to have because you have the ability to show that particular company hasn't worked through the things they said they were going to do, or they haven't provided the services they've agreed to bring in to the table on that one. So, on the contract side of the world, like I said, we live and die by them like everybody else, for better or for worse. But we're always here to know that people go through things in life. Everything is not going to be included in a contract. And at the end of the day, people sign contracts. So we're dealing with people. So that's kind of the way we choose to look at that. So next time you get ready to take a look at a contract or you enter into a service and someone brings up the word contract, my knee jerk personally is, I don't really want to do that. I'm not really, but I've also had bad experiences with that. So when you kind of look at the company you're signing the contract with, look at the service you're signing up for and ask those questions. And if it doesn't meet your expectations, dig deeper.
And of course, look at the scale of the company you're dealing with and the person you're talking to directly. If you're dealing with a smaller company and somebody higher up more directly, your contract can be bent a little bit more at their discretion if they decide to do so. When you're dealing with these larger corporations and things as such, the person you're talking to does not directly have that ability to do those things.
It's a boilerplate approach, I think. And for me, I don't think every business is the same. Everybody, has different needs. So that's why we like to kind of, learn what it is that your company does and what do you like to, what aspect of our service do you like? What do we need to improve on? And when you start looking at the contract side of the world, you can include those things. Rigidity is the killer of businesses, period. You can be very rigid. These are the rules. Okay, well, those rules are there for a reason, for sure. But at the end of the day, like I said, a company our size, we're big enough to do what needs to be done, but small enough to be flexible to help you accomplish what you need to accomplish. So anytime you have a question about contracts, or if you have an existing contract for a service that you're already in that you have a question about with your communications, feel free to give us a call. Our office number is 855-DCCI-PRO. That's 855-DCCI-PRO, PRO. Or you can visit our website to learn more about how we can help you in your communication skills. Yeah, if you're hearing that, you know we're about to close this episode out. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today, and this is our second long form that I've done in 4 years. So, you know, I want to thank you so much for your support and sticking through these last couple of weeks. It's like I said, I'm still learning. I hope I'm getting better every time. I want to hear your feedback. So if you visit thefamboss.com, that is our website with everything pertaining to the podcast. You can find other episodes. You can find information about the show, the host, the guest, all the fun things. And the most important thing there is leave some feedback. Leave a comment. Say, I like this. I don't like that. I'm a big boy. I always like to hear what you have to say. And, you know, really, I want to build this podcast out to be what you're interested in. So if you want to leave a message on the listener line, that's 855-4 podcast. And tell me something about a seasonal person that maybe you had in your life, or share a tip that you learned over the last couple of weeks that, you know, has been helpful to you from the show. Or maybe you can kind of, you know, fill in some gaps for me on some things maybe I've touched on. But the biggest thing we're after is really building the show with you in mind. So we're always listening for the feedback. We've had some pretty amazing calls so far, and we look forward to having more of those. But until next time, make sure you visit the show. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things. And thank you so much for your support, and look forward to hearing you on the next episode of the FamBoss Frequency.